ran the I-80 corridor for 6 years. Dry van, mostly, west to east, east to west, Salt Lake to Chicago, with stops in between. You do the same run enough times, and it becomes muscle memory. Same fuel stops, same way stations, same diner in Elko where the coffee is bad but the eggs are fine. I knew that route the way I know my own hands. And when you know a route that well, you also know when something is wrong. It started in October. I pulled into the Pilot in Wendover around 2 in the morning, Nevada side. There was a blue Silverado parked at the far edge of the lot, away from the fuel islands. Nobody in it that I could see. I did not think much about it. People sleep in their vehicles at truck stops all the time. It is not unusual. I fueled up, went inside, used the bathroom, bought a bottle of water and a pack of crackers. Came back out. The Silverado was still there, still looked empty. I climbed up into my cab and was asleep in 20 minutes. I woke up at 6 and pulled back onto 80. The Silverado was gone. 3 days later, I was eastbound again. Different load. Same route. I stopped at the Loves in Wells for a def fill and a bathroom break. I parked, climbed out, and there it was. Blue Silverado. Same dent on the rear quarter panel, same partial mud on the driver's door. Parked at the far edge of the lot again. I walked over. Nobody inside. No fast food wrappers, no coffee cups. Clean interior. There was a phone mount on the dashboard, but no phone in it. I stood there for a long moment and then told myself it was a coincidence. There are a lot of blue Silverados in Nevada. I went inside. When I came back out, the truck was gone. I started watching for it after that. I made a note on my phone each time I stopped. Wendover, Wells, Battle Mountain, Winnemucca, small stops, big stops, fuel only. I was looking for patterns in myself because I thought the coincidence was bothering me more than it should. 2 weeks later, I was parked at the Petro in Fernley. Middle of the afternoon. I was doing my post-trip inspection and I walked around the rear of my trailer. The Silverado was idling at the entrance to the lot, not parked, just idling. I could not see the driver clearly because the sun was directly behind it. I pulled out my phone to take a photograph, and by the time I had the camera open, it was already pulling out onto the frontage road. I called my dispatcher. I did not know what to tell her exactly. I said I thought someone had been following me along my corridor. She said drivers on high-value loads sometimes get tailed by would-be thieves casing freight, but I was running paper products, nothing anyone would bother stealing. She said to let her know if I saw it again. The call that changed everything came from the shipper in Salt Lake 3 weeks after that. I was scheduled to pick up a load at 7 in the morning. I got there at 6:50, and the dock manager came out before I even shut the engine off. He said someone had called the facility at 6 that morning asking for the name of the driver on the inbound load. They told him they were calling from my carrier's safety department. The dock manager said he gave them my name because he had no reason to doubt it. He looked embarrassed telling me. I asked what number they called from. He checked his desk phone log and wrote it down on a piece of paper. It was a 702 area code, Las Vegas. I called it from my personal phone in the parking lot. It rang 4 times and went to a voicemail that said nothing. No greeting, no name, just a beep and silence. I never saw the Silverado again after that, but 3 months later I transferred to a different region, different run entirely. I told people it was for the mileage. That was not the real reason. I think whoever it was knew I had started paying attention. I think they moved on because I had become unpredictable. The thing that bothers me most, still, is that they knew my pickup time that morning before I had even left my house. My dispatcher had set that appointment the previous afternoon. I was the only driver assigned to that load. Whoever called that dock had access to my schedule in real time, and they were making sure I knew that they had it. I keep that number saved in my phone. I have called it maybe 40 times over the last 2 years. It always rings 4 times. It always goes to that same empty voicemail. Someone pays the bill on that number every single month. I know that because it has never once been disconnected. Whoever it is wants that line to keep working. I pull refrigerated loads now. Have for 4 years. Produce mostly Florida to Pennsylvania and back, twice a week, like clockwork. Every Tuesday and Friday out of a distribution center outside of Homestead. Every Wednesday and Saturday into a grocery chain warehouse in Allentown. Same doors, same dock numbers, same check and procedure. I could do it blindfolded. I noticed the writing in January. I was doing my pre-trip at the Homestead facility before a Tuesday run. I checked the trailer interior the way I always do. Walked in with my flashlight, checked the floor temp, checked the walls. On the rear left wall, near the top, someone had written something in black marker. Small letters. I had to stand on a pallet jack to read it. It said, Allentown Dock 7. Wednesday, 43 degrees. That was my delivery. Exactly, Dock 7 was where I always backed in. 43 was the temperature I kept the trailer for Romaine. My delivery was Wednesday. I stood there for a long time looking at it. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe the previous driver on this trailer ran a similar load. Maybe they wrote it as a reminder for themselves. But the writing looked recent. The marker was still slightly raised, not worn flat. And the handwriting was neat, patient, like someone who had time to write carefully and was not worried about being caught. I told the yard manager. He said he would check the security cameras, but the camera covering that bay had been out for 2 weeks. He said it like that was a normal thing. Maybe it was. I started varying which trailer I pulled. I asked the yard coordinator to give me whichever unit was available rather than assigning me the same ones I had been using. He looked at me like I was being difficult, but he went along with it. The writing did not reappear for 4 weeks, and I started to think the whole thing was over. Then I found a third message on a trailer I had never pulled before. This one was on the ceiling near the forward bulkhead, in the same handwriting, same marker. It said only, still watching. 2 words. That was all. Whoever was doing this had access to the yard itself. They were not following my trailer from outside. They were walking in and choosing which unit to write in based on which one I was scheduled to pull. The second message came 6 weeks later. Different trailer, different week, but same route. This time it was written on the inside of the nose of the trailer, near the refrigeration unit. I only found it because I was checking the unit's drainage after it threw a fault code. It said, Sheets on 22. Tuesday night. The Sheets on Route 22 in Pennsylvania was where I always stopped for coffee on the way to the warehouse. I had never mentioned that to anyone at work. It was not on my log. It was a personal habit. 5 minutes, 1 cup, back in the truck. I did not stop there that Tuesday. I bypassed it entirely and drove straight to the warehouse. I sat in the staging lane for 3 hours before the dock opened because I had nowhere else to go. I did not want to be anywhere that someone expected me to be. I reported it to my carrier's safety department. A woman named Renee took my statement over the phone and said she would flag it. I asked if there had been similar reports from other drivers on my lane. She paused before she said no. Pauses like that stay with you. The last thing happened in March. I pulled my trailer out of the yard on a Tuesday morning and did my full pre-trip in the morning light. Everything normal. I got to Allentown, backed into Dock 7, opened the rear doors. The produce was fine. The pallets were intact. And on the floor, near the center of the trailer, was a single photograph, face down. I picked it up. It was a photograph of me taken from outside my truck through the passenger window. I was asleep. My seat was reclined. The image was slightly washed out by a flash or a strong light. I could not tell where it was taken. It could have been any rest area between Florida and Pennsylvania. I keep that photograph in my glove box. Renee from Safety said she forwarded it to their loss prevention team. I never heard anything back. I changed my stopping habits completely. I vary my rest locations now. I make decisions about where to park at the last possible moment, never more than an hour in advance. But whoever took that photograph had also been inside my trailer to leave it there. The trailer had been sealed with a numbered lock. That means they had a way around a sealed trailer without triggering any flags at the yard. And that means every new habit I have built might not protect me at all. I flatbed for a steel company out of Birmingham. Heavy haul. I-20 west to I-10 into Texas, sometimes down into the valley. Wide loads, oversized permits, the whole process. You cannot run that kind of freight quietly. The permits list your route, your approved stops, your travel window times. Escort vehicles know your plan. Scale houses see you coming. A lot of people know exactly where you are going long before you reach the state line. The man at the Port Allen Scale House in Louisiana recognized me in a way I could not explain. I had been through that facility maybe a dozen times over 2 years. It is a busy scale house on a busy interstate. There are hundreds of trucks through there every single week, and a lot of faces rotate through that building. He waved me to secondary inspection, which is routine for oversize. But when I handed him my paperwork, he said, without looking up from his clipboard, that I was running behind from last week. I had not been through Port Allen the week before. I told him that clearly. He looked up at me and said he must have confused me with someone else, then went back to checking my permits and axle weights. I let it go and pulled back onto the interstate. But what stuck with me was this. I had been through Port Allen 2 weeks earlier, and I had been 40 minutes late that day because of a loading delay back in Birmingham. I had not mentioned that to anyone outside of my dispatcher. I thought about that exchange for the next 300 miles into Beaumont. At the Flying J in Beaumont, I parked in the back row to work on my logbook. I was sitting in my cab with the curtain half drawn when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered because consignees sometimes call from office lines not saved in my contacts. The voice said my name. Then it said the name of my consignee in the valley. Then it read me my load number verbatim. Then it asked if I was going to make delivery by Thursday afternoon. I said yes. Then I asked who I was speaking with. The voice gave me a name I had never heard and said routing coordinator. I asked what company. They named a company that sounded plausible but that I had never dealt with on this lane. I said I would have to call them back and ended the call. I called my dispatcher immediately from the lot. She had not given my number to anyone that afternoon. She checked with the consignee's receiving office directly. They had no record of calling me and did not recognize the name the caller had used. Someone outside my logistics chain had my load number. Load numbers are internal. They live on the bill of lading, on the rate confirmation, inside the carrier's dispatch system. They are not published anywhere, and they are not searchable. To have that number, you need access to paperwork I am physically carrying in my cab, or access to my carrier's internal system, or you need to have been present at the shipper when the load was assigned and documented. I sat in that Beaumont lot for over an hour. I went back through every stop I had made over the past month. Every fuel island, every way station, every drop yard. I thought about every face I had seen more than once. I kept returning to Port Allen. The attendant had not been flustered when he corrected himself. He had been completely calm. He looked at me directly and said he confused me with someone else, but there was nothing in his face that matched a genuine mistake. No embarrassment, no pause. Just a flat, smooth correction and back to business. That is not how people react when they have made a real error about a stranger's identity. That is how people behave when they have said something they were not supposed to say yet, and they know exactly how to walk it back. I finished the delivery Thursday morning. Unloaded, signed the paperwork, took my empty permit back north, and returned the truck to Birmingham that night. I put in for a lane change the next morning. I told my dispatcher I wanted to try some Midwest freight for a change. She did not push back. But I still think about that phone call in Beaumont. What unsettles me most is not the information the caller had. What unsettles me is the tone. It was not threatening, not aggressive. It was casual, almost administrative, like someone calling to check the status on a shipment they had been monitoring for a long time. Patient, organized, bored, almost. At some point on that lane, I stopped being the driver and became the load. And I have no real way of knowing when that shift happened, or whether changing routes was enough to make them lose interest. I just know that someone out there spent weeks learning my habits in detail, and they wanted me to know it. That part was intentional. The call was not about information. The call was a message. And I still do not fully understand what it said.